Our meeting is going to be recorded due to the recent law passed by the Oregon legislature that requires recording of virtual public meetings. So that will be a practice going forward, I assume, and starting with this meeting. Let's just jump right into our agenda today. Let's take a look at the minutes from June. I'll give you just a few moments to kind of glance at those. Does anybody have any comments on the minutes from our June meeting? Could I get a motion to approve those minutes? I think Monica might be making a motion to approve the minutes. All in favor? Any opposed? Cool. I think that passes. We'll move on to public comment.
Sure, so we have several people on the line here. I think I need to cue you to be able to speak. So if you could just put in the chat if you would like to make a comment at this time, and then I will open up the line. Does anybody from the public want to make a comment? Yes, I'll turn you on, Nadia. You should be able to talk now.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Nadia Hassan. Sorry. I know several of you in different capacities and just wanted to recognize the work you're doing. I've done some advocacy work with Beaverton schools around diversity and equity, and just wanted to join in on the meeting and listen in. So thanks for all the work you do.
Great, thanks, Nadia. And it looks like Catherine French. I'll go ahead and turn your mic on.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having a comments period. I attended the beginning of a meeting a couple of months ago and was told there would be a town meeting including the police department and be over racial unrest and policing. And I haven't seen notice of that. So perhaps when Captain Smith speaks later today, or Kate Arnold, I think she was the one who also said there would be one. Perhaps they can address that. And so I have two other questions, one for the two counselors who are here. And that is, how did you address policing in this town, and what safeguards are you putting into place? And also, Captain Smith, I noticed on the bias report in particular that there is only, that the oversight of complaints is done only within the police department. What has been done to address that? I saw that Black people being picked up were 6 times their population rate here. And so police officers and council people, what's being done to address that? Thank you. And you don't have to answer right now. I know you come up a bit later in this meeting.
Sounds great. Thank you for your questions, Catherine. They are noted, and we'll either have folks chime in later tonight, or we'll send you some responses over email.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public want to make a comment? I see an Isaac, Jody, Kevin, and somebody on the phone. Last call. Oh, looks like Jenna, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
So my name is Jenna Hughes. I'm a planner at the City of Beaverton. I was here last month to talk about the Cooper Mountain Community Plan, and you all provided really helpful feedback about our project working goals. And I also just wanted to let you know that we have an online open house for the project, and I can provide Alexis a link. That's probably the easiest way to distribute it. But it's another way if you had other thoughts about feedback, project priorities, things that you want to see as we plan for the future of Cooper Mountain. That's a great way to provide feedback. And it closes July 22nd. And also I would just say, feel free to send it to anyone who you think might be interested. We really want to hear from a wide range of people and make sure that we get diverse feedback, so that we know, what everyone would like to see in Cooper Mountain. That's all I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jenna. It looks like we have Jody Monroy who would like to say something. You are on, Jody.
Hey, I just wanted to say hi to everyone. I didn't think I was going to be able to stay for the whole meeting, but I'm going to. So I'm happy to provide any input and updates on Beaverton Night Market when the subcommittee member speaks and reports back if there's any needed information or questions at that time. So hi, everyone. Great to see you guys.
Perfect. All right, I don't see any other hands or requests to comment. Oh wait, I see one from Catherine. Did you have something else, Catherine?
Yes,
Go ahead.
very. Am I unmuted?
You are, we can hear you.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. What is this advisory board's role in racial disparities in policing in this town? That's all.
Great, thank you, Catherine. All right, lots of great comments and questions to address. I'll turn it back over to you, Rachel.
Thank you. Just move straight into cultural sharing. And so hopefully some of those questions that were just asked can be answered in some of the liaison reports coming up. So Anusha, I think you're going to be sharing your screen, so go ahead and get your presentation started.
Great, yeah. Thanks, Rachel. Can you guys all hear me okay? Okay, awesome. So I'm not going to be sharing my screen the whole entire time. There's just one picture I wanted to share in particular, but I'm super excited to share a little bit about my background with all of you. And so there's going to be two aspects that I dive into today. One will be talking about my family's origin, and then I'll shift into talking about my career and my experience and what it's been like to be a woman of color in the science and technology industry, where minority representation is majorly lacking. So we'll go ahead and start off with the outfit that I'm wearing. Obviously you guys can't see the whole thing, but you can see some of the embroidery, and I wore this on purpose just to show you what a traditional top looks like that is worn by Indian women. This is called a salwar kameez. So most Indian clothing has this sort of just like very intricate like embroidery, which I just love. And if you walk around the shops in India, you'll see these like bright colors with these amazing stitched patterns and super awesome. But actually my love of night markets really stems from those visits that I've had to India, where these day and night markets are pretty much a daily occasion. Like that's how they do business. There's always like vendors outside on the streets and strings of lights and all these like spicy street food and bright decorations. Like you'll find like, you know, handcrafted like little things like this just around, and it's awesome because it's all really there's a lot of detail in each of these items, and they're sold like pretty much anywhere. So yeah, so my family comes from a city in South India called Hyderabad, and we immigrated to the United States when I was like about 5 years old. And so my parents were both born and raised in India. So my upbringing is largely influenced by that culture and the food. And what I love most about India is that it's a very diverse country. So a lot of people don't know that they speak over 22 different languages. And several religions that are practiced throughout the country as well. So whenever I go there, I'm super surprised at how every region pretty much varies from the other. So I draw a lot of my inspiration from my early experiences growing up there and what it was like to be exposed to that amount of diversity so young. So about 4 years ago, when my family visited India, I had the opportunity to visit the Taj Mahal, which was incredible. And I'll share my screen really quick so I can show you all. Hopefully you can all see this. So that's just me looking at the Taj Mahal, just observing the beauty.
We didn't see it that time, Anusha. Can you?
Oh, you didn't? Oh, there we go.
There we go.
All right. Yeah, so this is just an incredible picture that my sister actually took, and I just love it. But yeah, so it was awesome to you know, just get a tour of the Taj Mahal, because my parents were able to tell us about different stories and things that they've heard to really fill in the blanks, and it was awesome to hear that from them. And we actually had to take like multiple modes of transportation to get there. It's not easy, and it was a super muggy and like super humid day, but totally worth it. So yeah, and you know, when we were there, I also really got to experience a different part of the country than I'm normally have been used to. It's a much larger city called New Delhi, which some of you might have heard about. And when I was there, I was like, yeah, you know, it's so easy to forget that India has like a 1.3 billion, you know, people population. And when you're there, it's just these like packed buses and streets. So definitely keeps you on your toes. But yeah, with that, I'm going to transition into talking a little bit more about my tech journey, because it's also something that's very, you know, very much part of my background. When I was in 6th grade, I decided to sign up for this science and tech camp that my middle school posted about, and actually this is my little backpack from that camp. And so it was a camp that was hosted by IBM, and it was really my first taste of technology and, you know, understanding what careers look like in that industry. And I'm super grateful for camps like that, because I think it's important that minorities don't see this industry as being intimidating or hard to progress in, because it does, you know, look that way because there just isn't enough representation. And I think it's extremely important because, you know, we all use technology. Technology has become so crucial in our everyday lives. It connects people, processes, data, like all of this stuff. And having more diversity helps ensure that we're creating products and solutions for everyone and not just a specific demographic. So to kind of, you know, share with you an example, there's actually a YouTube video, which I can share later, where there was a female engineer that really talks about this in a very artistic way, and it drives this point home. But it's essentially talking about how facial recognition software, which is really taking off, is lacking a wide variety of data sets, so the results are often faulty. So, and this keeps happening because the engineers behind this software are predominantly white men. So what they're feeding the system is it only recognizes it from one perspective, which is their perspective. And as you can imagine, that's very scary because facial recognition software has already been implemented in certain law enforcement units across the country. So as you can imagine, this is, this has in some cases affected the minority population disproportionately. So that's a really big problem. And I think that's just one of the reasons why we need more diversity and more perspectives in these industries that are creating tools and technologies for everyone. So anyway, I can get into it and really talk about it for a long time, but one of the ways that I really contribute to changing this norm is by volunteering my time in this organization called PDX Women in Tech, and they're an organization that's dedicated to providing resources for minorities. So helping them, network or get mentorship, or, just providing them with job opportunities and things like that. So I'm super proud of the work that we do. And that's also one of the reasons I'm part of DAB, because I love listening to the experiences of others and learning about ways to contribute to our community and becoming a better ally. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Anisha. Did anybody have any questions for her?
Can you share the link so we can watch the?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll share the link here in just a few minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments? All right, let's move on to our liaison reports, starting with Councilor Mitchell.
So can everybody hear me? Great. Well, I'm happy to be here today, and I just wanted to start off right out of the gate, just acknowledging that, we had some challenges when it came to the AAPI resolution, but the really good news is we got it passed. And I know Council was extremely excited to support the resolution, and amidst that, there was a lot of learning lessons, which I think will only better serve DAB and the other boards and commissions. And, I just want to let you guys know that in my mind, and it was always unspoken, but I think it's important for me to share that, I always have an open door policy with anybody. I mean, there's a few of you that know I will just pick up the phone and call you and get straight to the matter, and I want you to do the same for me. Anybody who needs to reach out, I'm always here, and that's kind of what I had this space reserved for today, was just saying that, I appreciate all the work that DAB does, and I'm really glad to be the liaison. And, I'm committed to communicating if there are times when I cannot be here directly with all of you. So that way, what's going on and how things are being handled. And so I think there were some really great, lessons that were learned during that time. And I'm just happy to, be here with you guys. And amidst the victory of, passing the AAPI, I think it was a great win for everybody in our community. So that's all I had to say. Does anyone have anything to say about that? Thanks, Cynthia. All right, well then, if there's nothing else, I wanted to address Mrs. French or Ms. French on a level, as far as her policing question. I can't remember both of them, but I think it was kind of tied into one. And Councilor Arnold, you're welcome to chime in after me. I feel that, me personally, now interpretation is very different for each council member, but I think generally, we may feel the same, but again, I'm speaking for myself as a council member, Ms. French, and just want to let you know that I feel that our council role in policing it goes along or is policy development and policy review for our community. And, we focus on making sure that we're looking at facts and policy and community needs, and it's an ever evolving process. And, we have it in our forefront right now, and we have great discussions that are including all our stakeholders. You know, we want to make sure, first and foremost, we have community at the table, we have police at the table, we have other decision makers at the table who are affected, and just making sure that everybody's included in the conversation and communication is definitely our top priority. So Kate or Councilor Arnold, I don't know if you have anything different you wanted to say about that to Ms. French.
I am so fond. Sorry, my electronic existential world, there was someone at my front door and I had to get off my headset and yell at them, but you couldn't hear me. That was the good thing. But I missed about half of what you said. Sorry about that, you guys. Just a couple of points. Yeah, about the AAPI, thank you for your patience. What I say is government can be slow. Sometimes it's a good thing, but we did have a couple of little snafus that came up. Like, we thought we were going to be doing the resolution at the next council meeting, but the next regular council meeting was actually 3 weeks later because was the round table, and we don't put action items on a round table. And then that month we actually had 5 Tuesdays, and we didn't meet on the last Tuesday. So that was another one. Thank you guys all for your work and patience. And it was really relevant. I was pretty surprised. I did a little bit of research, some of which I shared during when we gave it. But one thing that was really something was that the Pew Foundation had done a study, a questionnaire, and 31% of American Asian people responded that they've dealt with social slurs and harassment since this COVID crisis. So that was pretty eye-opening. 1 in 3, that's something that needs recognition. So thank you for your work for that. And I did miss what you said about police. I heard you start talking about policy.
The caller in the public comments asked about what our role in policing is, right. And I'm assuming it's policing the police is what the question is born of, you know, and so I was just speaking of, in my view, you know, I'm not speaking for all of us, but I think we would probably generally agree that, you know, policy review and development is a big piece of, you know, having that oversight as far as policing in our community goes, and just making sure that all of the right stakeholders are at the table, including the community, the police, you know, anybody who's affected, who has influence over those policy decisions. We want to make sure that we give them a voice. And so that's what I was letting her know.
Yeah. And I would add to that, you'll see that things look different. Policing looks different depending on where you are. In a city like Chicago versus a city with a population of 600 people, it varies. And just like, I mean, no organization is exactly the same in every place you go. What I've seen that we've done for policy in the past at the higher level is we've always had a goal to have 1.48 officers per 1,000 people. And the idea is that we have enough officers that are out that we hope that they can be proactive rather than reactive. If they get low enough that they're just running from one 911 call to the next, it's a different looking community than when they actually have time to visit with apartment owners and businesses and community members and get to know people. The other thing that we have is we set up districts, and we try to have the same police. It's not 100%, but we try to put the same police in the same area, again with the idea of trying to do community policing where you get to know someone and you know the person that you're talking with. I mean, we're all human beings. I'm not saying that everything's perfect. I don't know anyone who's perfect. We can always get better, and we are taking this seriously. We are having conversations about, you know, how do we outreach to the community, especially people of color, to make sure that, you know, people are being heard and that there are changes that we need to make, that we can make them. So there's ongoing work, there's conversations. I really can't tell you about them now because they're not firm yet. I mean, we have specific dates and things we're searching for, but we are definitely looking at making sure that we have these crucial conversations, and we use this as an opportunity to expand what we're doing with the community so that our policing is effective and it is not biased. So we're definitely working on it. Again, slow, but you'll see more. To be really, we'll probably have a conversation, I would guess, by the end of July, and there will be some more things being set up. But we're in this phase of, we are definitely looking to see what we can do, and it's going to take some time and some, work with other people to make sure we are actually doing the most beneficial things for our community, not just snapping our fingers and running off and doing something. So that's part of why government's slow, but I think it'll be effective.
Cynthia, I see you have a comment.
I have a question for Councilor Arnold and Councilor Mitchell. I think most of us in this room and a lot of us who aren't in this room right now would love to be part of those police conversations. So how would people get access to be a part of those conversations? Is it by invitation only? Is it whoever shows up? Are you reaching out to specific groups? Like what's the communication plan for publicizing that event?
There's not a communication plan. We're still in the formation of it, but if you guys, I would love to have your involvement. It just seems so appropriate to have people from the Diversity Advisory Board helping us advise on diversity. Imagine that. So you are more than welcome, I'm sure. So if any of you are interested, yeah, let us know. I'm sure you'll be welcome. And we'd love to, more than just listening. Go ahead.
I don't think there's anyone in this room who isn't interested in giving thoughts, and we all probably know 10 families who would also love to give thoughts on all of it. And we know, I mean, those of us who work with kids know students who would love to give their thoughts, who might be scared to give their thoughts. So,
yeah.
Well, I'm going to interrupt. You're always welcome. Our agenda is published, and public comment period is almost every meeting. So, being able to call in during that time is really the best time, because ultimately, we want to make sure that everyone has the right space to operate with what it is as far as expressing need. And so, different discussions, although they may include the police, may not be the right discussions for, these feelings. And so, I think that the public comment period really helps us understand what it is people need. And so calling in, and then we can further develop, with the police department, with the policymakers, hey, this is what we see the need is. How do we address it? And so I think that those are really important times, and we would always welcome that. So.
Yeah. And Councilor Laura, I would add to that too. I think we'll see, but especially from what you're saying, Cynthia, we may want to have some conversations. If we had a group that really wanted to have that conversation, I think that could be done as a group by itself as well, and then take the high points of it to the council discussion as well. It's always open, but it sounds like if people really want to speak and be heard, that we might want to do something more than just council meetings. Councilor Laura hasn't heard about this. I'm beginning to advocate for this, because I think it could be really valuable to not get to the formality of a council meeting and actually have a place where people can have a real heart-to-heart conversation without 3-minute time limits and that kind of thing. So,
well, and I think one thing, Councilor Kate, if that's something that you wanted to drive, you being retired might have a bit more time to fully develop that, and to really have a constructive agenda, have space for people to say their feelings, which is always amazing and valuable, and then have space for action items. What is it that we're here talking about, and how do we, roll that out to the community? I think it's important to have those, quality quantifiable goals, because then people feel like it's really constructive, versus you don't want a bunch of people meeting and then you walk away and nothing is, it's like so much emotion, which is totally warranted during this time, and it's an emotionally charged time, and everybody understands, but being able to organize those thoughts into, constructive policy development is huge. So we can talk offline about that and make sure we get something if that's something that people want.
Yeah, and I like your point about action items. And you're right. Unlike you, I don't know how much you guys know about Laura. She's got a job that is more than full-time and crazy over coronavirus. She's got her child at home now that she's trying to educate. and council is on fire right now. So you are looking at one woman who is not getting enough sleep, or probably hasn't since March at least. So thank you for your work, and I am more than happy to take that up. Yeah,
Thank
and
you,
we'll talk
Counselor.
more about it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments for our city councilors who are here with us tonight? Okay. I know that Karenna is not here tonight. So we will move on to Captain Smith's liaison report for the Beaverton Police Department.
Thank you very much, Rachel. And hello, everybody. Captain Mike Smith of Beaverton Police, for those of you that don't know who I am. With me is Lieutenant Neil Stellingworth. He is with our Community Services Division. He and I work closely on just about all things community policing and outreach. And so he's hanging out with me in this meeting as well. And then he is the police department's liaison for the Human Rights Advisory Commission. So he is always at those meetings, and then I'll occasionally join him as well. So update for the department, department-wide, everyone's healthy, everyone's at work. We are business as usual, and keeping quite busy with calls for service as usual. And we are thankful that everyone is healthy. We have not had anyone fall ill to the COVID-19. So very thankful for that, considering the number of contacts that our officers make on a daily basis and the number of homes and businesses and places that they have to go on a day-to-day. Very thankful for that. Our website is continuing to be expanded upon. We are working full-time on getting more information available to anyone that wants to find it. So we did start out behind the curve on that. We certainly recognize that. So that is one of our priorities. Also, our 2019 annual report was just published, and that should be popping up on our website in the near future. We have hard copies that will start to be distributed that look like this, just chock full of all kinds of information that people we put that out every year. And if you go on our website, you can find multiple years worth of information, and it is really one of our most informative documents if you want to know about all the departments that we have and what kind of work occurs in each of our divisions. So I'd invite people that have an interest to go looking for that. I know that there's probably going to be tons of questions. I want to address the question that came up from, I think, Catherine French regarding our stop data report. That stop data report put out by the Bureau of Justice Statistics. And she mentioned that a stat in here somewhere for Blacks, and she used the term picked up. So I don't know if she means arrested or stopped. This is a stop data report. So Catherine, this is a report that covers stops. So every time an officer stops somebody in traffic or a pedestrian stop, this information is recorded, and that's where this organization that does the statistic gathering gets the data. So if I think in looking at the breakdown of stops by Black males, and I think what you might be doing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is you're comparing the 2018 census data of Black population for males at a little over 1%, and then comparing that to our grand total of stops at 6%, being a 6 times factor. Is that what
Yes.
So one thing to keep in mind about these stats is this is in Beaverton at any given time, our population is close to 100,000. It's somewhere like 96,000. But during the day, our population is much, much more than that because we have a transitory population. We have people that drive through town on 217, on the state highways, Shoals Ferry, Canyon Road, Beaverton Hillsdale Highway, Farmington. Those are all state highways that will take folks from one city to another city. We also have Nike here in town and other large employers. So our daytime population is way more than our regular population, but primarily due to the transitory nature of the city that we're in. And all cities have the same factor. So that probably explains to some degree that deviation. You can see the same thing occurs in white males. White males make up almost 32%, but our grand total for stops is nearly 45%. Matter of fact, in all categories, with the exception of Asian males, you'll see a very similar disparity, if you want to call it that, in a very similar ratio. So I guess it depends on how you look at the numbers. The important thing about this report is this was vetted through the Bureau of Justice, and our department was recognized for not having any large disparities. There was, I think, only one area that was identified as being slightly out of range in what they considered their acceptable range, and it had to do with Hispanics, and it was related to related to the search side of the report. And in that case, if the report or the folks managing the Bureau of Justice project they were not concerned about that. But you can break it down even further by geographical area, which we weren't asked to do. So the main thing to know is we were within the threshold on all these stats. So no one identified a problem. So does that answer your question, Catherine, in that regard? And then I'll get on to the other question you had about oversight.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, great. Well, if that logic were carried out, then there would be 6 times the number of white men picked up from the percentage in population instead of, was it a 12% difference instead of times 6? So that doesn't hold for me very much. It doesn't make sense. Okay, next question.
Can I respond to that real quick?
Sure.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to have a conversation with you one-on-one. We can really try to zero in on those stats. That's not a problem.
Okay.
I lost my train of thought on something else. I guess I lost you on the 12% factor there. But, and first of all, these aren't, I'm not sure what you mean by picked up. These are stops. These are like traffic stops, pedestrian stops. These aren't arrests. These aren't where people are actually taken into custody. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense.
Okay. Okay, so on your other question regarding oversight, when it comes to doing internal investigations, depending on the complaint, if it's most of our complaints are internally generated, where somebody violates a policy and it's identified either by another employee or a supervisor, and then those are investigated just like any other employer. You violate policy, the employer does an investigation to find out whether or not the violation occurred or not, and then depending on the outcome, there would be some discipline. A smaller amount of complaints come from the community, and that could be considered a service complaint or a conduct complaint. So conduct complaints are investigated primarily by our agency, by our professional standards division. It's a separate division in the city where it's a police lieutenant who manages that. And those investigations are done by either high-level supervisors or supervisors, depending on the level of severity on the complaint. If it's a serious misconduct complaint, then those are generally sent out to other agencies to investigate. So there's a little less conflict of interest. So in some cases, they'll go to another nearby agency, or we'll call on Oregon State Police, or we'll call on the Department of Justice to do those investigations. And then those findings will be brought to us. And then from there, we would decide how to deal with that, whether or not it was going to go through disciplinary measures. So that is pretty typical among law enforcement. There are exceptions where there are public oversight committees that are put together. I know Portland has a version of a citizen oversight or public oversight committee. Many agencies across the country have that. Beaverton does not currently have any kind of community or community oversight. Does that answer that question?
Yeah.
Thank you.
We can talk about that too, perhaps.
Sure. And I can, I'm easily reached. You can contact me at, just if you do call, make sure you ask for Captain Mike Smith, because there's another Mike Smith here who works graveyard, and you don't want to get a call at 3 in the morning.
Okay, sounds great.
All right.
Thank you so much, Captain Mike Smith. I appreciate you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate you too. And I wanted to also just thank our counselors in the meeting for the information you were sharing regarding the police department and the upcoming public meetings that we are looking forward to holding. I know that we're all going to be sharing a role in those, and there's going to be a lot to learn, a lot to share, and we're looking forward to that opportunity. So any other questions? We're prepared, or hopefully prepared, to answer some more questions if you have them.
Looks like Monica has a question. Go ahead.
I don't have a question. I'm leaving very soon, and I just want to say again to Captain Smith, thank you very much for the job and to keeping up your spirit so high and continue doing what you do the best. Me personally, there is no way that I would never recognize what you guys are doing. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank
See
you.
you.
Good to see you.
Nice seeing you too.
Captain Smith, could you, I know this is in the staff liaison report that everyone received, but could you speak a little bit to the work that ATRAC will be doing with the police department for the rest of the year, just a little bit?
Yeah, they, I have my notes here from that. So they put together a 6-month set of, I'm trying to want to find out their inquiry sessions. I want to make sure I have the right term and get some of the other things going on. And so that'll be an opportunity to in our monthly meetings to basically share information. I think the one that's coming up next month has to do with what information is available, much like I shared about what kind of information is available on our website, what kind of information is available for the commission to review. I know they'll be interested in our training information. They might be interested in more policy information. Training is a hot topic. The public wants to know what kind of training we do on an annual basis, And just to give, I guess, just a quick snapshot on that, we train every year for, there's a mandatory required a number of hours every officer in Oregon needs to obtain. And then the department has additional training that we do on an annual basis through in-service training. So there'll be a lot of information coming out about that. So, but back to the Human Rights Advisory Commission's sessions. I don't have that list in front of me. Do you have that? Hang on a second here. I thought I had it written down. Well, I guess I don't have that sheet in front of me.
For July 1, the meeting, we already had the July 1 meeting. So August 5th is the next meeting. And I think Captain Smith already touched on it. It's data transparency and communications. And they're going to review before September session, overview of regular outreach, dialogue activities, ways for community to give input. So that's what the next August 5th meeting is going to be. And then more of the same in September, current community outreach and channels for feedback and dialogue, advising on community listening sessions, if desired. It says materials provided for review before October session, BBT use of force policy and training information. And we've already shared a lot of our use of force, in fact, all of our use of force policies with HRAC. October 7th is use of force policy, existing model proposals for policy reform. For example, A Can't Wait and others, materials to be provided for review before November session, models for community oversight. And then November 8th, they're going to talk about community oversight and again, materials provided for review before December session and draft potential HRAC recommendation that have emerged from previous sessions. So December 2nd, they're to finalize board recommendations that discuss next steps. I said that a little fast. If you want me to go back, I certainly will.
He always talks that fast. Yeah. I know that by the end of the year, they're hopeful that they can have some meaningful involvement in shaping some policy. Hopefully, working together, we can identify where the department can make some policy improvements, and they want to be a part of that. So that's always been, I think, available to both the HRAC and the DAB. These are opportunities. That's why we're here. So as issues come up, as they have in years past, different incidents occurred, and questions come up about our policy and our training, and it's this feedback and in these conversations that gives us the opportunity to take a closer and harder look at our policy. I mean, and those of you that have looked at our policy manual, you can see that it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages, and until you have something happen that touches on one of those policies, you don't always get a chance to really scrutinize. Although periodically we review policy and we have to go through and make sure it's current with case law and a lot of factors. Sometimes you just don't realize that policy does get stale, and it's a living document, so it always needs to be reviewed and updated.
And you kind of just touched on this a little bit policy-wise, but I know 8 Can't Wait is a big topic of conversations in a lot of communities right now. And I know y'all touched on it a little bit last month, and there was a work session at City Council. Just wondering if you have any updates worth noting, worth sharing with us today regarding the 8 Can't Wait.
I think the most important update are the legislative changes that were made to law that touched on a part of those. And so things like the duty to intercede, although that's been in our policy, and it was already in our policy, it is now law. So our policy will need to have some languages changed on the duty to intercede just to cover some of the nuances, but the policy already exists under 300.2.1. And there also is going to need to be some requirement of some training so that our officers understand exactly what that law means. It's, I believe, a misdemeanor crime for an officer who doesn't do that. Other 8 can't wait, the issue of chokeholds. Now, though, that is law that prohibits the use of chokeholds. And as we've stated before, for our department, we haven't trained or had chokeholds as a part of our use of force procedures for 25 years. I remember when I started here in 1995, there was language in what we used to call general orders that touched on the carotid hold, the choke hold. And we weren't, at that time, we weren't even allowed to actually train on it. It was demonstrated for us, and it was nothing they let us actually practice doing because we were moving away from it then in 1995.
Sexual restraint.
Carotid restraint. It's been so many years we have to remember what it's called. So the only time, if anyone was to use anything that resembled a chokehold or any kind of strangulation type tactic, it would be a use of deadly force, and it would only be something that could be used if deadly force was justified. So, like I said, it hasn't been something that's referenced in policy or training because it's something that we just don't do.
Can I say a few words about that?
Please.
To give more of the layman's language to it, and feel free to correct anything I say if it's slightly off. I want people to get accurate information. I asked about the chokehold as well, and what I heard was pretty fascinating. What it is that, and again, correct me if this is off. You will not offend me by setting the record straight, okay? My understanding is that years ago, they used to do the carotid. The carotid artery is the blood vessel that goes to your brain. So the idea was to use that, and it would cause people to faint. So it was a way to quickly take someone down that was safe. And again, it's not choking them to death. It's causing not enough blood to go to the brain for a short amount of time. But over time, to your point about, things change and we learn things, there were too many injuries, things happening that we didn't want to see happen. So using that as a restraining mechanism was taken away. And so there never was anything that says, yeah, you can choke somebody to not give them air. There was the make them faint thing, and then we moved away from that. But that's what's still there is, imagine, and again, thank God this doesn't happen very often, but if you are in a situation where there's deadly force, if someone's trying to choke you to death, for instance, if the only thing you can do is reach up to their neck and choke them back and try to get them off of you, that's a different situation. It's like, do I do this to save my life and lose my job? So that's why they have that as the caveat. And again, the reason we don't train in it is we don't want people to be thinking even subconsciously about using it. I don't know if that's an accurate thing or if you have anything more to say for that.
That was fantastic, and that's exactly right, what you described. And I think one of the main factors to consider is in a situation like that, and this is one of the reasons why, and I wasn't part of the training and management, obviously, in 1995. I was a young officer trying to do my job. But I think people came to realize that situations they're not static. They're not like in a laboratory or in a gym where where you can practice these things. Out on the street when there's something violent, it's violent, it's out of control. There's no two circumstances that look alike. And so trying to get somebody in the perfect position to do that without doing it wrong or without accidentally injuring somebody in a way, was not even practical. It wasn't considered a deadly use, a use of force that was considered in the deadly force part of what we used to call continuum. use of force continuum is come and gone. That was old philosophy, if you will. But even when that was the philosophy, the chokehold wouldn't have been at that deadly force level. It was more of a control tactic. Just like you said, you would put someone in some kind of move and you plug this off and they'd fall asleep, and then you take that moment of a second that they're only asleep for like a second or two. You take that opportunity to gain control. So it's a control tactic, but it was dangerous, and it just wasn't really that practical. There's better. And then since over the years, there's been other tools and other tactics that have become much more effective. The control tactics we use today result in very few injuries. We keep track of every injury to a arrestee and every injury to an officer making an arrest. We keep track of those, and we have for years and years. And the numbers of injuries to arrestees have gone way down since our training has increased over the years, and our training has become a little more organized, and we're using tactics that are easier to remember. I remember years where they would teach you certain manipulations and things you'd have to do to try to gain someone's control, and you'd have to practice that stuff on a daily basis, like a martial arts practice, to be good enough to use those tactics in the street. So now they're teaching us things that because we're only training those things once or twice a year, or once a year in some cases, that you can remember them, and they're more practical. They're very simple, and they actually result in fewer injuries to both officers and to the subjects being arrested. So yeah, just like you said, and also the thing about not having it in a policy or not having it as something we train is like, if you're, like you said, you might have a pen in your pocket and you're in some position where you can't get to the tools that we train. Maybe you can get a pen and you can just poke them in the eye or the face, and then maybe it hits them in the eye. We don't train that. There's nothing in our policy about doing that type of tactic, if you would, but you might have to do that. And so I think I don't know how we even got this far into this carotid conversation, but where else are we going with this question? I lost track.
We were talking about, I asked about updates on the 8 Can't Wait.
Yeah, I had it right here in front of me. Thank you. I got so excited about talking about carotid.
Also, just a quick note, probably just a couple more minutes and then we got to move on to our next presenter. So just a couple more highlights.
Yes. And then the shooting from, that didn't make that. Is that part of the 8 Can't Wait? Yeah, okay, so there's a couple other areas too that we'll be looking at from the legislation to adjust our policies. And then again, there's more things on the 8 Can't Wait that are still yet to be addressed. I'm gonna pull this up if I can. Yeah, I mean, I move this to my bigger screen. Okay, and then yeah, some of the de-escalation training, of course, that's a part of our regular training, but we are probably going to be looking at additional training opportunities as this conversation continues. And then there's some requirements, and as far as the 8 Can't Wait. So there's other conversations to have when it comes to shootings and warning before shooting and those types of things. More conversations to be had. We do have language in our policy that talks to that as well. But well, we got a minute or two. If you have any other questions, that's fine.
Hi, Captain Smith. This is Teresa Payne. Sorry to just barge in. I don't know what's going on with my screen, so no one can see my face. Your colleague sitting there, I forgot his name, but I briefly said in the chat box, as a person who participated in the Beaverton Citizens Academy, the 55th class, proud to say, but I think he should speak to a lot of questions that community members have had, in my opinion, are shared in Beaverton Citizens Academy. And I think that, in my own personal opinion, that's not something we see the police department strongly pushing. And at this time, it is absolutely critical that you guys use that as a community engagement tool to increase the number of residents that can be a part of it, because a lot of the questions that are being asked right now are things that are actually discussed. And I don't know if the same leaders are doing that. Officer Denisha Barkley, a community resource officer, with the community service team members, Lieutenant Daryl Fletchell and Sergeant Sean Kramer. They did an excellent job putting together that. So, I'm sure you're familiar with the Citizens Academy, but going over, criminal investigations and going over takedown tactics and even putting people through real life scenarios of, situations. If you are being approached by a normal person, what do you do? How do you manage stress? How do police officers evaluate situations in the moment, all types of situations, force response, talking about jail, talking about high school shootings, talking about traffic, talking about even, the SWAT team or whatever. So I think that those conversations, entire, 2 to 3 hour blocks of lessons for people to have those questions answered, criminology, targeting people, right? And start answering some of those questions. When you were commenting on the self-defense, I laughed to myself because I did in college take Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I just want to say, no offense to police officers, but I wish someone would try and put me in a chokehold because it would not end up well for anyone, right?
Yeah,
one, because I get out of it and embarrass the officer, but two, because, I'd probably get shot if I did that, right? Because no one wants to be embarrassed. That was a joke, by the way.
You're right. It's a horrible thing.
The point of to use that as a tool, and I think that would answer quite a few people's questions. I'm looking at my Beaverton Police Citizens Academy book as I'm talking, which no one can see me. So once again, I apologize for that. But
the short answer to your question is yes. Yeah. And we have been discussing that, obviously, because of the current environment with COVID and things like that, that leads to a little difficulty, but we're thinking about doing something in the fall, maybe even an abbreviated academy. How that looks, we're not exactly sure yet, or when it will start. It kind of nothing set in stone, but it's something I want to get back to because you mentioned it earlier, and you're absolutely right. It's a very good conduit, a very good networking opportunity for us as police officers to reach out to the community and let people see what the police department does, why we do it. Sometimes listen to your reaction. I think you have a similar reaction. A lot of people that say, "Wow, I didn't know about that," or "I didn't know about this." And sometimes it's clarification for people. So yes, we want to do that. We are planning to do that. Our original idea was to have in September. I don't think September is going to work, but when we do that, I was going to send an invite or reserve at least 2 spots for both DAB and ATRAC, so the members of our boards and commissions can have a seat at that academy if and when we have it. But no, thank you for that, and that is definitely something on our radar. So thank you.
Yeah,
you're welcome. I respectfully disagree that you should cut it short, though. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, that's only because of the COVID situation, and we also we're moving into the new facility, and we haven't quite figured out what that's going to look like, and as far as space and stuff. But no, I agree. The model we've used for 25 years or more, 27 years of the Community Academy. We changed the name to Community Academy now. Try to be a little more sensitive to today's time. It's our intention to continue with that model. It's our single most successful community policing outreach tool. I am forever running into people that had comments just like you made, that they remember everything about it. It's fascinating, and you couldn't. We've talked about could we do something virtual, like this, and the answer is probably not. We don't think it would have the impact to do some video or to try to do something virtual with Community Academy. It really has to be the model that we've been using because it has been so successful. So we're anxious to do that, to get back to normal, whatever the new normal looks like in regard to COVID, and continue with that.
Thank you, Captain Smith, for your update, for answering all those questions, and for providing more information on the Community Academy. Please take a look at the chat for anyone who's interested in learning more. There's a link in there. We do need to move on to the next item on the agenda. So if you do have any additional comments or questions, please reach out directly to Captain Smith. So next thing on our agenda is a presentation on the downtown design project. We have Brian Martin here with us. Please, board members, be thinking about questions and feedback for the planning team as they relate to incorporating goals and action items from the DEI plan. So with that, Brian, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you. I threw a quick hello, everyone. I'm Brian Martin. I'm the long range planning manager with the city of Beaverton. And I'm going to throw the PowerPoint on here. Can you all see that? Yes. Okay, great. I think I need to move it though on a different screen. Apologize, I got to switch a little bit. Okay, so can you still see the whole slide and not my notes? Yes, okay. Still learning how to do this on the, on the Zoom. So we have been working since 2017 on the downtown design project to really follow up on the community vision's goal of having a vibrant downtown. So, we started in 2017, and the first step was working on with the community on a little bit more detail on, well, what does vibrant downtown mean? What might actually that look like in Beaverton's downtown? What it'll be like to walk down the street? What do people want to see? What do they want to experience? And the that led to us creating a urban design framework, and then late in 2019 we started actually writing a development code that would regulate how new buildings in downtown and major remodels occurred. So where we were earlier this year is I kind of wanted to come to the Diversity Advisory Board in February, and that wasn't available, so we scheduled for April, and then COVID happened, and so that didn't work, and so I came in June, but the meeting ran long, so here I am, and unfortunately, it's getting pretty late in the project, but I think this is a good opportunity to kind of provide for us, so I can provide a high-level update on where the project is and what this development code thing is all about, and talk a little bit about how it looks from a diversity, equity, and inclusion plan and racial equity lens, such as it is. I mean, I don't think we did enough, but we did what we could. We did what we could based on where we started when we started engaging it in that topic, and we learned a lot, and there's a lot more coming. So that's kind of the arc of this, and I'm really looking forward to your comments. So I'm going to get into it because it's a lot to cover. It's been going on for 3 years. So as I said, the main project of the first phase was this urban design framework, and it really functions for a guide, like a guidebook about how downtown should grow and evolve, and it's something we're actually using to write the development code language. So, the ideas that we heard from the community about this framework and what vibrant downtown really means is people wanted more jobs and housing downtown, more intensity and more activity. Wanted housing choices, mix of uses. So there's a lot of different reasons to go downtown, or a lot of different places to go if you're already there, for whether you live there or work there. Prioritize pedestrian activity, design places for people and make great public spaces, and have good design, have an interesting, attractive places to visit. So as I said before, one of the first implementation items when we talked to folks about like what does vibrant downtown mean is we knew that buildings that make up downtown are a large part of what vibrancy is, or how you make a vibrant downtown, because those buildings hold places to live, work, run a business, meet your neighbors, and have fun. So it makes downtown exciting. So the code part has two main goals. One is to remove obstacles to desired development. So if there are obstacles in the code, things where we're actually getting in the way of what we want as a community, like housing, affordable housing, jobs, we can try to get rid of those. And on the other hand, promote design quality to make sure that when we get those new buildings or those major remodels, there's a minimum level of design quality. And we'll talk more about that later. I know that there is some tension there, because if the quality expectations are too high, things might get expensive and the buildings might not happen. So we're trying to balance those two things. But the idea is with the quality is you get, as you're walking through downtown, you see interesting things in restaurants and shops and services, and there's like windows to see what's going on inside, and there's little plazas and parks. So it's actually, they're designed in a way that people really respond. So with the schedule that we're on is on July 21st, we're looking forward to going to a joint City Council Planning Commission work session where we get to talk about the whole code and kind of how it works, what's in there, and get their questions and direction. In August, we plan to go to the Planning Commission a couple times because we think when those questions come up and those concerns come up or suggestions for improvement, we're going to need to work on those a little bit with the Planning Commission. And then the idea is we would improve the code more and start the hearings in September. If everything were to go, as it's planned right now, the code would be effective in November. So just real quickly, the code amendments, the first thing we did was we worked with the community and the council to come up with design principles for the code. So these are things like design places for people, support an intensely developed mixed use, mixed income downtown, design, consider context. Maybe not all the rules have to make the same building everywhere or have the same response everywhere, but consider where you are in downtown. Make sure people can move around. So safe and comfortable connectivity. I can get from here to there. And I want, it's a nice walk or a nice drive or a nice bike. Preserve and engage nature, incorporate sustainability, and have places to gather outdoors. I wanted to highlight a couple of these. Those are the quick versions, and you can see at the bottom there, design places for people. There's more words that help fill in the blanks on what that might mean. And I just wanted to highlight one of the things we made sure was in there, and folks commented on and we actually refined along the way, was ensure downtown is a place for everyone, including racially and ethnically diverse populations, as well as historically underrepresented and underserved populations. So having that in the DNA of like what we're looking at when we're trying to move forward and write this was important to a lot of folks. Number two, some of the additional wording is see, intensely developed downtown that supports a diverse population and a vibrant 18-hour activity. And of course, it starts with lead with housing at all income levels as a key to downtown vibrancy. So the idea is it's not a place for the wealthy, but or the dominant culture only, but we want to try to see how we can make it a place for different communities and different cultures. Okay, so now I'm going to do a short overview of the code. It's really high level, so if you have questions later on, let me know. It starts with where's downtown for this plan. So it's actually shown on this map. Normally I'd say we're here in City Hall, but we're not tonight. We're all over the place. But that's where City Hall is, and the MAX station. The Beaverton Transit Center is over here, and the main library is down here. So it kind of goes up here on Center, 117th, railroad tracks. 5th is down here on the bottom. Is the high school, and then Hawken is over here. That gives you a layout, kind of a idea of where the boundary is. So what do development codes do anyway? They basically regulate private development for the most part. So not so much what's in the street, but what's happening on private property. And this involves, which land uses are allowed, commercial, retail, housing, that kind of thing, parks, building size and shape. You'll see measures of height and density talked about. And then distance between the property line and buildings, which is referred to as setbacks. That's what this diagram is over here on the right. Let's get a good pointer here. The property line is shown here, and sometimes you have to put set your building back a few feet. And sometimes you can build it right up to the property line, but that's what that regulates. Also, this code has site design standards in it. So it's the location of building on the site. You can see this building is right up on the sidewalk. Landscaping requirements. If you're gonna where you should have walkways between things like doors and parking on a site, and what those should look like. And then things like how much parking is required and loading and how that all works. Codes also have building design. So how big is a building? How massive is it? And also how massive does it appear? Because you can see this building is 5 stories tall, but it's got the upper floor set back a little bit. It's got some recesses for balconies. So there's ways to make it feel a little less monolithic and huge. It regulates things like the first floor details. So is it, are blank walls like this allowed? The short answer is they're limited, so we don't get a lot of that. Or does it have glass storefronts, and is it like a nice place, an interesting place to walk by? It could also involve materials. What materials are on the outside of the building? So some of the things that are actually in the draft code, and I put the link to the code in the chat, and I think you got it in the meeting invitation from Alexis. Some of the changes to the land uses that are allowed in downtown is community gardens are allowed now. I was kind of surprised they weren't already, but they're in there now. Parks are permitted rather than having to go through a special process to occur. Like a research lab office situation is allowed, which it wasn't before. So again, more jobs. Vehicle sales and service has been not allowed for a while, although I know you see car dealerships out there. But the idea is like in the future, if they decide to make a change, those property owners and do something else. Large areas where cars are stored for selling is not vibrant necessarily, so they're not allowed and they can't expand, which is kind of to encourage that change in downtown. And there's reduced parking requirements for certain developments near MAX stations and kind of in that First Street part of Old Town between Hall and Watson-ish. Some other big changes is we have 4 zoning districts now instead of 2, which just allows us to just have a little bit more contextual approach rather than 2 really large districts, 4, so we can do slightly different things in each one. A couple of the highlights I think here are in the yellow boxes in Old Town, the maximum height used to be 40 feet. and now it's going to be 65, like the rest of that purple area. So that was actually an obstacle to the Marianne building, which is pictured there. It's an affordable housing project at First and Angel, I think it is, or Second. So we actually had to do a quick code change to make that building possible because that 40-foot height limit was getting in the way. So we're just going to remove that for all development. And we actually reduced the height limit, or well, actually, these are all proposals. I shouldn't say we did it. These are all proposals for the council to consider. But the proposal is to reduce the height limit to 5 or 6 stories in this section over here, which has apartment buildings now and a RV park, mobile home park. So that just kind of reduces the redevelopment pressure there. The height limit used to be for 10 or 11 stories. And it also provides an ability to step down in height from 120 feet here to 60 feet here to basically like 1-story houses north of center. And I mentioned building design standards before. There are new ones in the code. There's durable materials, wood, brick, stone, glass. I'll say that there's a list of allowed, but there's a path for developers to get different materials approved that are still acceptable. So there's flexibility there, but the expectation is set for durable and quality. There are some standards in there to remove perceived massing that I mentioned before. Also, there's in several of the districts, if you go above a certain number of stories, it asks you to shrink the building footprint as you go up. So it gets skinnier as it goes up, which helps, again, with that feeling of like, how big is that building? And there's some rules for making the facades more interesting. You can see in these pictures. There's parts that are sticking out like columns, and there's parts that are recessed a little bit. There's there's stoops, there's doorways, like there's a little texture there that makes it more interesting instead of a blank wall. And then these stoops or patios or terraces actually provide for pedestrian trips too, and help build community. Like you can actually like talk to people as they go by and wave and say hi to your neighbors. So as far as a racial equity approach or lens on this project, we didn't bake it in from the beginning, I think, which was a mistake. But we realized in 2009, it's not like we never thought about it, but in 2019, we realized we were writing these rules for development, and we could actually accidentally or through not paying attention or through ignorance exclude certain uses or people or make them not welcome or not embraced in downtown. So what we did was we used the Government Alliance for Racial Equity Toolkit to take our best shot with the time that we had and the data that we had of analyzing, like, what are we missing here? Like, what do we need to think about? And having worked on that analysis quite a bit myself, and I know we identified that there were some single-family homes, not very many, in downtown on sites that might be redeveloped. We identified that we could actually write rules that might affect business owners and which ones felt like this was their downtown and that they could actually operate their business and attract their customers here. And what we actually did was we stepped up our engagement to the business community, and we engaged Micro Enterprise Services of Oregon, Adelante Mujeres, and Impact Beaverton, which all work with small businesses and including working with business owners of color. And thank you to them. Got to give them credit for spending so much time going through the code and talking with me about what it might mean. So some of the things we heard were that, be careful about rules excluding certain cultures or businesses from downtown. So window signs were an example. You'll see a picture later, but the rules citywide say only 20% of your storefront windows facing the street can be covered with signs. And there's a lot of businesses who that's how they communicate with their customers. They have more signage, they have more sale signs, they have pictures of their merchandise. So in downtown, the proposal is actually to double that to 40%. Still having glass and have that experience where people can see out and people can see in and like there's an interaction there and it's interesting, but also allows expression in that way. So we'll see how that goes. A question was asked, during this engagement, how can traditionally underserved and underrepresented communities benefit? How can they participate and actually build wealth by, being developers in downtown? Or how can they, people of color, get jobs on the sites where these buildings are being built? And, depending on how neighborhood improvements happen in the district, so like pads or lighting or landscaping or plazas, how can we be sure that those are kind of distributed evenly, even maybe in areas where the new development isn't happening, but other areas where people are living? More on that later. How can the city promote entrepreneurship? We'll circle back to that later. How can open space be designed so it's for everyone, and how it will be at police so everyone can feel safe there? Policing definitely was covered earlier, but I think it's important to think about how our development code rules might influence that. And then someone also mentioned for me, so the code images at the time in the code, there were a lot of like expensive places. So they said, images matter. Like you should have a variety of places, and you shouldn't necessarily show all expensive examples. The code, you should be actually able to meet some of the code requirements with inexpensive solutions, or just regular, modest solutions that you see in a lot of downtowns. So those were all great comments. I will say the code can actually, we changed the code to address some of those, but the code as a tool is relatively limited. It's basically rules for buildings. So we really appreciated the comments and we took them to heart, and we modified where we could. And we're going to keep thinking about that and processing that as we go. And even into the future, even if it gets approved the way it is, in the next round where we have to like fix things and like evaluate if it's working, we can keep an eye on that. I went through the DEI plan as well, the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion plan that y'all worked so hard on. And there were some key ideas in there about affordable housing, livable community for all, and economic empowerment. So I've got a couple slides on that, and then I'll try to wrap it up so you can ask questions and make suggestions. So for affordable housing, I mentioned the Marianne earlier, and that increased height limit is going to make affordable housing projects work better, be more financially feasible in downtown. Some of the design standards in the code might add cost, but in most situations, we tried to provide a menu of options. So we didn't have one solution for what your building should look like, but we had a series of them, and some might cost more than others. And it gives the developer and the property owner flexibility to figure out like what works on that building in that location. And then I mentioned, of course, I'm repeating a little bit, but I wanted to kind of revisit things a little bit after I told you the outreach we did. We did reduce the development pressure where this kind of lower cost market rate housing and the RV mobile home park is up in the corner. And we allowed some commercial in there too, based on some of the input we heard from the business community. This is a picture of a place on Allen Boulevard with a lot of signage in the window. It's just an example of something we addressed and changed based on comments. I think the entrepreneurship is something the city is already working on, where we actually work with and fund MISO and Impact Beaverton. We have a lot of programs to help small businesses, and there's more we can do. Actually, when we did the Allen Boulevard project, we identified as one of the actions that we actually provide support if the business owners along Allen wanted to form their own business group, so they can cooperate and like get things done. That's important down Boulevard. So, there's again more to come. I think economic development's pretty busy with COVID right now, but it's it's still there on the to-do list. And speaking of to-dos, we have future work that's going to be able to think about and try to figure out how the city can address some of those things I mentioned earlier in the questions and feedback that we heard. There's more downtown equity work that you're going to hear about soon that's kicking off, that will actually look at downtown and Allen Boulevard together. and I think there's going to be a discussion about equity and, I'm sorry, not equity. It's equity's in the title. Equity, displacement, and mitigating that. So more to come. The Housing 5-Year Action Plan, I think you're aware of, but that has lots of steps to increase affordable housing and make sure there's housing for a variety of income levels. We're actually in the process of hiring an intern in the planning division to, and it's not just the planning division like thinking about this topic, but to research history, including the racist pest housing and development practices in Beaverton, to understand the discrimination from the past and the source of the disparities in income and health and et cetera of people of color in the region and the city. So we want to understand our past so we can figure out, like, you know, not only figure out what we need to do to correct, but also explain to folks in the community why it's, you know, the history and like why action is needed now. And the planning division, the long range planning team is incorporating racial equity into project management. So when we start a new project, it's baked in from the beginning. So thank you that was a lot. I rushed through all that. Thank you for your patience on getting through that. It's a big topic. And please let me know if you have any questions about the code or questions about, or suggestions for future equity work or implementation of the DEI plan. Thank you.
And Brian, I just want to point you to, can you see the chat? There have been several questions that have popped up.
Thank you. I've been focused on the presentation. So let me.
I just encouraged people to do that while they were listening. So if you want to see which ones you want to take now or which ones you think would be better for.
All right. I'm trying to get back to Zoom so I can stop
Brian,
screen sharing.
Most
there
of
we
the
go.
questions were written by me, and they're more for you to think about than answers that I'm demanding at this point. But as you were talking, I just started typing some thoughts that I had.
That's fantastic. Should I read these now, or does people want to ask questions out loud? What do you want to do?
Rachel,
Chair, do you have a
would you
suggestion?
How much more time would you like to devote now? And my suggestion was that you sort of skim them and see which were kind of lower hanging fruit that you could answer in a really quick way. But do you have a suggestion about how much more time you'd like to spend, Rachel?
I think we can do about 10 more minutes.
So maybe if you want to start there, Brian, and then we can, if there are things you think we should take offline, we can then open it up to anybody else who might have something.
Well, I mean, I think answering the question, what can DAB do, is really important. So, you know, it's really challenging to come in at the end here. So I think what DAB can do is what is the opportunity everybody else has, is when it's going to Planning Commission and Council. Well, first of all, I'm here. I'm at, like, you can contact me anytime. So if you are in there looking at it or have questions about it, like, I'm happy to engage with you and talk to you about that. But, you know, you have all the opportunities for public comment and reviewing of the drafts on the website, and when there's a Planning Commission meeting or council meeting, you can provide that input. But you can contact us directly too. I'm happy to talk about it. As far as the plans to use empty lots and how high can we build, and will there be live work options? So the thing that I often forget to mention, though I might have alluded to it, is for the most part, the empty lots or the redevelopment is going to be private property owners deciding to do it, and not the city. The city is just setting the rules for how it looks and like how much they can do and what they can do. So in some cases, the city will own the land or buy the land and participate in that. But for most of the land is the private property owners. The height depends on the district. So I don't have the map up, but the middle part is 120 feet, which is 10 or 11 stories. Old Town is more like 65, so it's 5 or 6 stories. That part up in the corner is 5 or 6 as well, where the residential is. And then on the west side of Cedar Hills, it's, I'm going to forget, 75, I think, so 6, 7 stories. There are provisions that allow people to go taller, again, if they like skinny them up a little bit. I'm looking for. Oh, okay. So what's my request? Is it to listen for any red flags? Are there pieces here you think would be inaccessible or exclusive to the communities you represent? So, yeah, I mean, if one of the reasons I came is I wanted you to tell me what I didn't do well enough. And I wanted, because you know the DEI plan so well, I wanted you to hear where we need to do more. And like, if that's because you know it so well, I mean, I went through it too, but if you think like, please do more work on this, this plan is like looking good, but have you thought about that? Like that's one of the reasons I'm here. And just wanted to learn from like what we did and what you know. Yeah, go ahead.
Could I comment on one of my questions? Which like the vast majority of our questions have to do with equity of access to to the businesses and to the residential areas. One of my questions was specifically around how can we support budding entrepreneurs? Would there be, and there might need to be a change of code for that, but is there a way that we could support budding entrepreneurs who don't yet have enough capital to do much? Like, can we showcase brand new, like, I think I might want to sell this, and on, whatever night of the month in this empty store, we can showcase something to get for budding entrepreneurs to get exposure, where they don't have to fill out they don't have to jump through a lot of hoops. They can just try and see if their churros taste good or if their t-shirts will sell, kind of like our winter night market, but on a much more informal basis, but where entrepreneurs feel safe to try out a product, and where they can maybe get some guidance as to how to start a business officially.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, as far as the helping goes, I mean, I think that is why the city funds Micro Enterprise Services of Oregon and Impact Beaverton, because they know the business stuff better than we do. And they're working with folks like that who are like micro businesses, like just getting going, and they help them with business plans and where to get capital and like all that. So I think that's an important thing that we're already doing, and that's about as deep as I know about it. I know that we do that. As far as the spaces, like pop-up stores kind of idea where people can fill space, that's a good idea. I mean, I think I should ask economic development what they think about that. I don't think there's really code barriers to doing that, because if you have an area where retail is allowed, and there's a space available, there's nothing really from stopping them from being there for a short period of time. But it's a matter of, is there empty space somewhere? Is the property owner willing to do that? Is the physical location available? And that's not, I don't think that's something that we've worked on yet, but I can pass that along as an idea to economic development for sure.
Okay. So hi. So I was going to say, doesn't the Beaverton Chamber of Commerce help with the business advice and how to get started? So are you working with them?
Sorry. Yes. No, I should have mentioned that Impact Beaverton is part of the chamber. So yes, they do that, and they do that for all businesses. But then they have, I think, Impact Beaverton is, I think, focused more on the smaller businesses.
I was just gonna throw out here One of the questions in the chat, Brian, was around accessibility and for folks with physical disabilities, I think. So what considerations were put in place for people with different abilities? And is this project equally and equitably accessible to those folks? Is that something that is addressed in the code?
Yeah, so we largely, at least as far as, well, actually for your streets and sidewalks and things, the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Engineering Design Manual kind of lay out how those things should be built so they're accessible. One area where we realized that was going to be important, and we provided an option for it, was we had those standards for making first floor residential interesting. So we talked about stoops and terraces and other things that were like above grade, right? They're above the sidewalk. They require stairs or some sort of thing. So we made sure one of the options that developers could use to comply with that is a patio where you can just roll right in. There's no grade change. So it's not necessarily a requirement, but we didn't want to like completely preclude an accessible first floor unit. So other than that, like inside buildings, that's more of a building code issue. So if they're going after a certain number of units, I think you have to have an elevator and that sort of thing. But that's kind of the example that comes to mind when we thought, oh, like, wait, we can't forget about that.
Well, Brian, I think we have many more questions in the chat box for you. And I know there was a comment in there as well requesting that you follow up with us on some of these questions later.
Oh, of course.
So I think we have to move on with our agenda, and I really appreciate you coming back month after month after month. I know. Thanks for sticking with us. And we're so glad you finally presented today. So if we could just hear back on some of those questions that you weren't quite able to get to, that would be great. And thank you everybody so much for all of your wonderful, insightful comments and questions as well. And I don't know if Brian, you're able to provide your contact information in case anybody else has any additional bits of feedback that they'd like to send directly to you.
Thank you for having me. I'll put that in the chat.
Thank you. Okay, we are going to move on to revisiting our DAB goals, which also got postponed a bit from our meeting last month. So this was something we talked about at our meeting in May, kind of in the heat of COVID, which we still are in. And so Alexis, myself, and Teresa kind of took some of your feedback from that meeting and have some new or updated proposed goals to kind of look at as a board. And I think, yeah, great. Alexis is sharing that document with us right now. And hopefully you've had a chance to look these over, but the proposed goals that we have now to approve or further discuss if needed. One, find a way to reimagine the Beaverton night market. 2, engage in local activities, events, and meetings, both virtually and physically when possible, to increase community awareness of the Diversity Advisory Board and how to access the board. 3, provide monitoring and accountability for the DEI plan through a review of the staff report and assigning progress ratings. 4, speak in front of City Council a minimum of once per quarter. 5, collaborate on a project or projects with at least one other city board. And 6, be responsive to community needs regarding COVID-19. So does anybody have any comments on these updated proposed goals?
And again, it's hard to see when screen sharing is happening, so just go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like to share.
I'm going to take the silence to mean that hopefully people are feeling pretty good about these proposed updated goals. I guess we need a motion to approve them. Shara, is that a motion? Yes. And maybe a second.
Teresa Payne, second.
Awesome. All in favor, although it's really hard to do this virtually. Seeing a lot of yeses. Is anybody opposed? Awesome. All right, motion carries. New updated goals. Thanks, everybody. And I just want to point to the second part there about focus areas for the year. We did go ahead and we listed some of the activities that we have already done within each of those focus areas to kind of just review our progress so far, and then noted a couple of upcoming things on our agenda that we hope to hit in those focus areas. So make sure you take a look at those when you get the chance if you haven't already. I'd like to move on to our updates with the time that we have left. The first thing on here is the AAPI Resolution update. As we all know, it was unanimously approved by City Council last week, so that's very exciting. Very appreciative of City Council for working with us on that, and big thanks to Councilor Arnold and Councilor Mitchell for being here tonight for our meeting. It's wonderful to have you with us. And then we'll move on to an update on the Beaverton night market. So if anybody wants to, from the subcommittee or Jody wants to say a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. I'll do a little report out on our last meeting, and then anybody from the committee feel free to jump in after me and add some more detail if I missed anything. So during the last meeting, we met Jordan, who's going to be the creative director, or who is the creative director of the virtual night market, and he was super cool. And from what I remember, I think they've already started filming certain segments that they're going to feature on the night market. So that was great. And then we also kind of just ran through again, getting the word out through social media, our social media platforms, and then also touched on some of the performers and the entertainers for the night market as well. And I think we were shortlisting that I think that's where we kind of left off on that. But the big thing is that we were trying to figure out what the criteria should be for the hosts. So we decided on 4 hosts, so 2 for each night. And I'll read off my notes. So if we've got some volunteers, but we wanted to extend that invite out to all of you as well to see if there was other people that were interested. So if you want to be a host, you need to be comfortable in front of the camera and be able to improvise on the spot. You also need to be able to commit some time and some prep before the show, as well as participating on the actual night. So the rehearsal would be on Thursday, August 13th from 2 to 7 p.m. And then you would either be participating on the August 14th or August 15th. From 5 to 10 p.m. And there will likely need to be some personal prep that goes into it as well. And then, so we were throwing out some ideas of what might be a good way to pair folks up. And we were thinking about potentially matching up hosts with vendors that are that they either have existing relationships with, or if they speak the same language, we felt like that might be, you know, kind of nice. And then also just keeping in mind that most of our vendors are middle-aged women, and all of the folks that have volunteered from the committee are also women. So I think it was Manije, Rahana, Monica, and then myself. And so if there are any members of DAB that are interested, specifically any men that are interested, that would be great. So if you want to let Alexis know by the end of tomorrow if you are interested, that would be great. I think that's it. Anyone else have any updates from our committee?
And then I think we also decided on the headliners. I think it was DJ Prashant and the Ardley and the two musicians that I thought were still deciding on those. And two dance groups. I think we're still deciding on those as well.
The one other thing I wanted to just jump in and add real quick is that, and the committee itself hasn't heard like the resolution of this, but the committee's been pushing for, there's been kind of a tradition over the years of having the DAB give a welcome in different languages. And so we wanted to work that in. So we want to invite people. So on the bottom of, if you got the email I sent later today with the night market update report, at the bottom I have some information about recording your own welcome in a different language and sending that in so that Jordan can splice those together. So the ask is that if you speak another language and you would like to record a message and you'd like to record a message, that you record a very brief one that pretty much follows the message that we've provided, but in your language, and that it be 15 to 30 seconds maximum. So you can record yourself and send it in. If you know that you speak the same language as somebody else on the board, it might be good to check in, just because we won't have time for 15 of these messages, but we will try to get in as many as possible, especially if they're brief. So just an encouragement and invitation to do that as well. And we're hoping to collect those in a week. So by next Monday, you can send me those. So more details in that email.
I see that Caroline has her hand raised. I'm wondering if that is new, or did we pass your comment?
I think I was trying to support the motion. I was raising for a comment. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Were there any more comments on the or updates on the night market?
Sorry, did you mention that you have to know by tomorrow night, or is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I think we wanted to know, or Alexis wanted to know by tomorrow night, so we could figure out who the hosts were going to be by the end of the week.
So should I be emailing Alexis in that case?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
If you want to throw your hat in the mix, and then we'll figure out how to decide. Thanks.
Okay, we just have a couple more minutes for this next piece, but we wanted to provide a little space for board members to share any community engagement activities they've been involved in that's related to DAB work. I know there have been several folks who have attended different rallies, went to the Public Safety Center tour. We had a presence at City Council at a couple meetings recently, but did anybody want to speak to that?
Yeah. I was involved on the panel for interviewing the associate judge along with Councilor Mitchell. She was on the same panel as me. So that was a nice, that was an interesting process to go through that. And, you know, I learned a lot it was so nice to be, you know, part of that whole group and go through the whole procedure, not knowing, not in the field of the law, but, you know, I got a good indication of where they were coming from. But yeah, that was something I participated in, and, you know, enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, and this is Caroline. So I've had 2 engagements this past month. Thank you, Captain Smith. We had a community event for maybe I would call it the Kenyans and the Africans in the Beaverton area, and I think the Portland Metro at large. And Captain Smith was able to address the community regards to matters of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Not just that, but also matters of police and the impact, I mean, of just whatever the unrest that was going on at that time. So in my role as one of the members of the Diversity Advisory Board, I would like to appreciate you for being part of that conversation that brought a lot of healing. I also last week participated in the interview panel for the talent acquisition specialist for the Beaverton city. And so blessed definitely to be able to give back in that role. Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline.
Hi everyone. I'm just to add for that, we pay a visit for Public City Center and with Toilet and Health Park Recreation when we participate for rock painting in the Schiffer Park. And I attend the rally we did from the Beaverton State Library to City Hall and coming back to Beaverton State Library. And we did one Black Lives Matter movement. It was about like 700 people between Fifth Avenue and Hall. And one part I like most of all of it was Beaverton Night Market Subcommittee. At the beginning, I was like in the middle for not doing it virtual because I didn't know how it's gonna turn out. It was my first time attending subcommittee and doing the night market. But when I attend one Zoom meeting with Jordan and Judy, and I attend 2 home visiting while they're doing filming, because we have 2 Kurdish vendors and they need support, translating, helping with decorations and stuff. So when I attend that yesterday and a couple of weeks ago, I really love it. I really appreciate their patience, doing a great job, very professional. And I'm like, I think it's gonna turn out to be something very good happening in this COVID right now. I was not expecting that. I was the only person in the subcommittee doing like, oh, let's not doing it because it's not gonna turn out that much. But I'm asking subcommittee and the DAP member to help us for doing it like social media, because I see some people sharing it, but not all of us. If you could help anyone from their side, we're gonna appreciate that. We need more people to attend because they are doing a really good job. We are trying to help, but we need more people to participate. Thank you.
Wow, you all are doing so many amazing things. Thank you so much for being great community members and advocates for your communities. We just have 1 minute left. So
okay.
Alexis, is there anything you'd like to highlight as far as staff liaison announcements go?
Sure, I'll just share my screen really quick so I can make sure that you've seen this document that I sent you earlier today. This is just the announcements about both from our programs, cultural inclusion and community services programs, and then for the city, the communications that go out to all boards and commissions and neighborhood associations. So definitely please help us promote Night Market and send your interest for hosts and to record welcome messages. There's a little more information about those ATRAC BPD inquiry sessions, and I will share some additional info soon. We are going ahead with Welcoming Week, so please, and there's DAB involvement in that this year as well, so more details to come. And then you have a bunch of information, city communications around responding to the current racial justice movement. City buildings are closed, still closed, remain closed, but there are library services happening, and many other, the majority of other city services online or by phone. So please take a look at this update. The one thing that I did not get to put in this update, and I should have, and I know, I believe Kevin is on the phone, there's been an invitation and a request from the Beaverton Downtown Association, who is working on right now on revising and adding diversity, equity, and inclusion policies to their organization. And they are just looking for volunteers and people to be involved or to accompany that process. So please, if you have interest in that, I will send Kevin's contact information. Also just wanted to say that this information got passed along both through Kevin reaching out and also through Karenna, who wanted to advocate for the board to be involved. So please think about if you have a little bit of extra time to support the Beaverton Downtown Association in their work to strengthen diversity, equity, and inclusion policies and practices. And that's all.
And one last thing, did you guys meet since the Juneteenth Black Lives Matter event that Cynthia led? Thank you for leading that for us. It was, God, how many people? I don't know. Did we ever get an estimate? It was hundreds of people in front of the library. And then we all marched from there to the City Hall area between the peace poles at the library and the peace pole at Beaverton Central. So thank you so much for stepping up, Cynthia. You did a great job leading that.
All right, thank you so much, everyone, for your time this evening and for your work in our beautiful city. So take care until our next meeting, and yeah, have a great night.
Alexis, can I just ask you one more thing?